Hey guys, I have a really fast, simple makeup thing today for my Halloween tutorials. I haven't really planned it out, so I'm just gonna play it by ear, so I'm moving my camera. The only thing I did prepare before is just this latex piece. Literally all I did was take my bottle of latex, which looks like this, but is white, and I poured it all over a makeup case, like just a flat plastic surface. So I just poured it into a big blob, and that's why there's some holes in it, which I actually wanted. And then I let that dry. I just went to work or whatever, and then, sorry, I'm a hot mess right now. I let that dry, and then I peeled it off and powdered it. So pretty standard if you've ever used latex before. And the next thing I'm going to do is take my spatula and put liquid latex all over the edges and glue it onto my face like this. And I'm just using where one of those little holes is to line up with my eye so I can actually see through it. So I'm just going to do that quickly and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so you can see where the wet liquid latex is. So I just glued that above my eyebrow. And I made the hole line up with my eye. And now I'm just taking the glue on my flat end of my spatula and just gluing down all the rest of the corners so it's nice and flat, or as flat as possible in this case. It's easier if you just put it on the latex piece. I have a bit of extra here, but it's okay if it like folds over, because it's going to be covered anyways. You just want it to be glued down as secure as possible. Okay, so that's all glued on. You can see that big wrinkle there, but that's okay. I'm just going to glue over it. So next thing I'm doing is taking, oops, got my hair in it, cotton balls. I just like spread them apart. And I'm just going to dip them in the liquid latex and glue that all over this patch in weird patterns. Just to make it like lumpy and gross. Oh, it peeled back a bit there. I'll fix that later, so you guys can see this. And then I just want to go over it with latex on top so it's completely wet, and make some holes in the middle like I usually do. This is really messy, obviously, so if you would prefer, it might be better to wear plastic gloves doing this. But the goopier the better. Oh. This is getting really bad. It does make that hole where my eye is look really creepy though. Okay, so I think that's enough, so I'm just going to go over all that. I don't want any strings though, so I'm going to try and like flatten out those little stringy pieces from where it was pulled apart. And don't let it drip on your clothes. That piece is really clumpy, so I'm going to use that. And then just build up latex on those pieces that don't have anything to make it like clumpy for when I paint over it. Okay, and then I'm going to just let that dry. Okay, so now I have that almost dry. Only a couple spots are still wet. I'm just taking my spray foundation. This one's just a color that's like a little bit darker than my skin. I'm just going to spray over that whole thing. And then brush that around. I have a foundation brush here that has like a bit of green on it from whatever I was doing before and I didn't clean it. I'm just going to use that to brush this all around so it dries faster and blends into my skin a bit better. So I kind of figured this would happen. The white parts ended up more like tan than the other parts that I used, so I'm just going to go over all of it with powder. So this is the same powder I used to dust the latex piece before. So it just has like a yellow tint to it. I think that's what tinted my latex piece because it was supposed to be clear. So I'm just going to go over this whole thing with that same powder so it sets. I'm using a crazy amount of powder too. Okay. So that's a little bit better. Now I'm going to take a foundation brush, a fluffy eyeshadow brush. I'm going to go around the outside with eyeshadow. So this is my fluffy brush I use for all these tutorials because I don't care about it getting wrecked. And then my trusty rust eyeshadow color that I use to make everything look swollen. This is my school palette, but you can find that color anywhere pretty much. So I'm just going around the outside of the latex piece. with this. Oops. And then blending it out away from the skin. Okay, so now it is time for face paint. I have my Monster Effects palette, and I'm going to be using these colors here. So one's like a dark purple and one's a blood red. It's just like a darker red than usual. So I'm going to use a flat brush with some water. Don't want to use too much water because the stuff doesn't stick to the latex very well. And I'm going to start with the darker color and paint all over the prosthetic piece. Yes, I am. 1 second. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, I'm using the dark color around the outside. I'm going to leave the inside for a lighter red color. It's good to go like right over the edge so you can blend the latex into your skin better. So I didn't do too good of a job. I'm gonna blend this all out with that fluffy brush again after once the face paint dries. It will help it mesh with the eyeshadow. Okay, so there is the brown for the outside. Now I'm using the blood red color for the inside. Hopefully you guys can see the difference in color. I know it's not much right now. And I'm kind of avoiding the cotton pieces because I want to use the driest face paint possible for that. So I took my red from my other palette, which you guys see me use all the time, just the basic color palette, and I'm just going to use that to go over the cotton pieces. And be careful around your eyes if you make a hole in it. Don't want to poke into that hole, which is really difficult not to do. Okay, and now I'm using this red to go over the cotton pieces. That's the lightest red. So I'm like barely using any water on my brush. I tried to dab it all off. Because if you get too much water, it will flatten these pieces down, which we don't want. So I'm just quickly going over those. I have those pieces all painted up. And now I'm using that fluffy brush again, wherever it went. I lost it somewhere. Using that and my rust color around the edges again, just to blend everything together again. And it helps mix the face paint in. Okay, so last thing, to give dimension, one second, I'm going to use a matte black eyeshadow, that same fluffy brush, I just dried it off, and I'm just going to shade in like the underneath of all that cotton. It makes it look a little bit more 3D. And help it stand out. So you want to just run it like along the edges. And then I'm going to be adding lots of blood. I think this brush is too thick. Switch to my angled liner brush. The other one was way too thick. I made a mistake. Okay, so I'm just going to finish the outlining and show you what it looks like. Okay, so I went around the tissue paper with black. So if you notice, I only did it on one direction, just the underneath of everything, because if you're like highlighting or creating shadows, it's always going to be in the same direction, so it's always in the underneath of where the light hits it. And now it's time for blood, so I'm going to use this, but I'm using my dropper that I always use to do this kind of stuff. Okay, blood dropper. So now I'm going to do it around the outside so it helps blend in the edge of the latex. I don't have much left in here. I just gotta fill this thing up. Okay, and now I have blood in it. Just around the outside edge. Let it drip. I want to cover all the pieces of the toilet paper that's still white that I missed when painting. And then just let it run naturally. I think that's it. And I want to smudge some pieces that are running too crazy to stop them. So I'm just using my finger to like mush it around a bit. Alright, and there you have it. So a gross bloody face piece for Halloween. That was pretty easy to make. Yeah, and you can always wear a contact underneath if you're okay with wearing them overnight. Something like white that makes your eye pop underneath. You can barely see my eye there, but it looks pretty creepy in person. So yeah, thanks for watching and stay tuned for more videos.